The phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, jarring me from the half-sleep I'd been drifting in on the couch. My wife and daughter were asleep upstairs, and I'd been watching mindless television, trying to shut off my brain after a long day at work. The number on my screen was international, unfamiliar, the kind of call you usually ignore as spam, but something made me answer. Hello? Silence. Then breathing, ragged and quick. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 15 years, speaking words that stopped my heart. Michael, it's Rashid. Please don't hang up. I need your help. Rashid. Rashid Al-Tamimi, my interpreter in Iraq. The man who'd saved my life at least 3 times during my deployment. The friend who'd become a brother during the worst year of my life. The person who'd vanished the day before I flew home, leaving only a brief note saying he had to leave Baghdad for his family's safety. 15 years of silence. And now, at midnight, a call for help. Rashid? Jesus Christ, where are you? Are you okay? I'm in Turkey, Ankara. Michael, I'm sorry to call like this, after so long. I know you probably hate me for disappearing, but I have nowhere else to turn. My family, we're in danger. We need to get to America, and I don't know how. The visa process, they say it takes years. We don't have years, maybe weeks if we're lucky. His English was as perfect as I remembered, but there was a tremor in his voice I'd never heard before. Rashid had always been calm under pressure, steady when mortars were falling and firefights erupted around us. Hearing him scared terrified me. Slow down. Tell me what's happening. Why are you in Turkey? What danger? You remember I worked as an interpreter for American forces in Baghdad. For 3 years I helped soldiers like you. I believed in what we were doing, believed America would help Iraq become better. But after you left, after most American forces pulled out, people remembered. Taliban sympathizers, former insurgents, people who saw me as a traitor for helping Americans. I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. I'd heard the stories. Interpreters and their families targeted for reprisal, hunted down and killed as collaborators. The special visa program meant to protect them had been slow, underfunded, buried in bureaucracy. At first it was just threats, messages saying I was a traitor, that I'd pay for betraying Iraq. I tried to ignore them, tried to believe that with Americans mostly gone, people would forget. But they didn't forget, Michael. They never forget. His voice cracked. 3 months ago, they killed my brother, shot him in the street in front of his children, left a note saying I was next. Oh God, Rashid. I got my wife and children out immediately. We fled to Syria, then to Turkey, used all our money, all our resources, just to get this far. We're living in a refugee camp now. My wife, my 3 children, my mother, waiting, hoping for asylum somewhere, anywhere that's safe. Why didn't you contact me sooner? 15 years, Rashid. I thought you were dead. I tried to find you after I got home, tried to help you get to the States, but I couldn't locate you. Your family said you'd moved, wouldn't tell me where. I know, I'm sorry. After you left Baghdad, things got complicated. The security situation deteriorated. My family was threatened multiple times. I had to move them frequently, had to cut off contact with anyone connected to my work with Americans. It was too dangerous. Every connection was a potential way for the wrong people to find us. He paused, and I could hear voices in the background speaking rapid Turkish. I've been in Turkey for 3 months, living in this camp, watching my children go hungry while I fill out visa applications that go nowhere. The Turkish government won't let us work legally. We can't go back to Iraq. It's a death sentence. And I can't get my family to America because the system is broken. The special immigrant visa program that was supposed to protect interpreters like me has a backlog of years. My children will be grown before we're processed. What about other countries? Europe? Canada? I've tried. Everyone has tried. There are hundreds of thousands of refugees here, Michael. Millions across the region. Every country is overwhelmed. Every system is backed up. Without connections, without someone who can advocate for you from inside the system, you're just a number waiting forever. This was why he'd called. Not just to reconnect, not just to explain his disappearance. He needed me to be that connection, to advocate from inside the system in a way he couldn't do from a refugee camp. Tell me exactly what you need, I said. Over the next hour, Rashid explained the situation in detail. He'd applied for a special immigrant visa, the program created specifically for Iraqi and Afghan interpreters who'd worked with U.S. forces. But the application had been pending for 2 years, with no updates, no interviews, no progress. Meanwhile, his family was stuck in limbo, unsafe and unable to move forward. The people at the camp, they tell me stories, Rashid said. Interpreters who waited 5, 6, 7 years for visas. Some who died waiting. The program is supposed to take months, but in reality, it takes years. And we don't have years, Michael. The people who want me dead, they have long memories. They have connections everywhere. It's only a matter of time before they find us even here. Have you contacted anyone else from your unit? Other soldiers you worked with? I don't have contact information for anyone else. You're the only one I remembered the full name for, the only one I could search for online. I found your Facebook profile 3 days ago, saw pictures of your wife, your daughter, saw that you built a good life, and I almost didn't call because I didn't want to pull you back into this nightmare. But then I looked at my own children sleeping on the concrete floor of a refugee shelter, and I knew I had to try. I thought about Rashid's children. I'd met his oldest, Hassan, when he was 2 years old. Rashid had shown me pictures constantly, talked about getting his son educated, giving him opportunities Iraq couldn't provide. Now Hassan was 17, had spent his formative years fleeing violence, living in camps, watching his uncle murdered in the street. I'll help you, I said. I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way. You saved my life in Iraq, Rashid, multiple times. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. You were doing your job, I was doing mine. We were brothers in war, but that war is over. You don't have to. Yes, I do. And not because of debt or obligation, because you're my friend, because your family deserves safety, because the system that promised to protect interpreters like you has failed, and individual soldiers have to step up when institutions fail. After we hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time, my mind racing. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Special immigrant visas, refugee resettlement, organizations that helped Afghan and Iraqi interpreters, lawyers who specialized in immigration, senators and representatives who'd shown interest in fixing the broken visa system. The more I read, the more overwhelming it became. The S of V program was indeed backlogged by years. Funding was inadequate, processing was slow, and even when visas were approved, getting refugees from Turkey to the United States involved layers of additional bureaucracy, security checks, medical examinations, all taking more time. But I also found hope. Organizations like No One Left Behind and the International Refugee Assistance Project that worked specifically to help interpreters, veterans who'd successfully advocated for their former interpreters, congressional representatives who'd personally intervened in cases to speed up processing. I started making lists, people to contact, organizations to reach out to, documentation I'd need, proof of Rashid's service, letters of recommendation, evidence of the threat he faced. I'd been out of the military for 15 years, working as an accountant, living a quiet suburban life. But that night, I felt like a soldier again. Like I had a mission that mattered more than anything else in my comfortable civilian existence. My wife found me at 3 a.m, still at my laptop, surrounded by printed articles and handwritten notes. Michael, honey, what are you doing up? I told her everything. About Rashid, about Iraq, about the call and the promise I'd made. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to determination. What can I do to help? She asked when I finished. That was why I'd married her, because when presented with someone else's crisis, her first instinct was to help, not to worry about how it would affect us. I'm going to need time, I said. Time to make calls, write letters, maybe travel if necessary, and money, probably. Lawyers aren't cheap. Plane tickets for 5 people from Turkey to the US are expensive, even just supporting them while we work through the system. Then we'll make time. We'll find the money. You do what you need to do. Over the next weeks, I became consumed with Rashid's case. I worked my regular job during the day, then spent every evening and weekend researching, calling, emailing, advocating. I contacted every organization I'd found that helped interpreters. I reached out to veterans groups, explained the situation, asked for advice and connections. I wrote to my congressional representatives, both senators and my House member. I detailed Rashid's service, the danger his family faced, the unconscionable delay in processing his visa application. I included documentation from my deployment, proof that Rashid had worked with my unit, letters from other soldiers who remembered him, and slowly, painfully, things started to move. A veterans advocacy organization agreed to take Rashid's case pro bono. A lawyer specializing in immigration offered to help navigate the bureaucracy. A congressional aide in my senator's office flagged Rashid's application for expedited review, but it was still slow, agonizingly slow. Each step forward seemed to trigger 3 new requirements: more documentation, another interview, additional security screenings. The system wasn't designed to work quickly, and even with advocacy and pressure, it ground forward at a glacial pace. Meanwhile, Rashid's situation deteriorated. Conditions in the refugee camp worsened as winter approached. His mother fell ill but couldn't get adequate medical care. His children were going to makeshift schools but falling behind because instruction was in Turkish, which they didn't speak fluently. I'm losing hope, Rashid told me during one of our weekly calls. I watch my children suffer, and I think maybe we should just accept that this is our life now. That we'll never make it to America, never be safe. Maybe I should find work here illegally, try to build something even without permission. Don't give up, we're making progress. The senator's office says they've escalated your case. The advocacy group thinks you might get an interview within a few months. Months. Always months. Meanwhile, my children sleep on concrete floors and eat one meal a day because that's all the camp provides and I have no money for more. I started sending money. Not much. I wasn't wealthy, but enough to buy food, to pay for Hassan to attend a better school outside the camp, to get Rashid's mother the medication she needed. My wife never questioned it, just adjusted our budget and found ways to make it work. I also started sharing Rashid's story. I wrote an article for a veterans website about the broken visa system and the interpreters we'd left behind. It got picked up by other sites, shared on social media, eventually caught the attention of a reporter at a major newspaper who wanted to write a feature story. The article came out 6 months after Rashid's initial call. It told his story. The brave interpreter who'd risked his life for American soldiers, saved my life specifically on multiple occasions, and was now trapped in a refugee camp while the visa system meant to protect him failed spectacularly. It included my advocacy, the congressional intervention, the agonizing wait while his family suffered. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Veterans from across the country reached out, sharing similar stories, offering help, demanding action. Media outlets picked up the story. My senator's office called, said they were getting pressure from constituents, said they'd personally follow up on Rashid's case. And finally, miraculously, 3 weeks after the article ran, Rashid got the call. His visa had been approved, his family could come to America. But approval was just the first step. They still needed medical examinations, final interviews, travel arrangements, processing at multiple checkpoints. Each step took time and coordination and money we didn't have. I launched a crowdfunding campaign, posted Rashid's story online, asked for help covering the costs of bringing his family to America. The goal was $15,000, enough for flights, initial housing costs, basic supplies to help them get started. We raised it in 48 hours. By the end of the week, we'd raised $40,000. Veterans sent money. People who'd never served but believed in helping refugees sent money. Organizations matched donations. Strangers from across the country contributed to bringing one interpreter and his family to safety. "Michael, I can't believe this," Rashid said when I told him about the fundraising. "People I've never met who have no connection to me. They're helping my family? That's who Americans are when we're at our best. We help people who helped us. We don't leave anyone behind, even when the government does." The process still took another 6 weeks. Medical exams, final security checks, travel arrangements coordinated across multiple countries and time zones. But finally, on a cold morning in February, I stood in an airport terminal, waiting for an international flight to arrive. My wife was with me. So were half a dozen other veterans from various units who'd driven from across the state to be there, to welcome an interpreter home. We held a banner that said, "Welcome to America, Rashid." The flight landed. Passengers started emerging from customs. And then I saw them. Rashid, older and thinner than I remembered, but with those same intelligent eyes. His wife in a hijab, holding the hand of their youngest daughter. Hassan, now 17, nearly as tall as his father. His mother, elderly and frail. And 2 other children I'd never met, born in the years since I'd left Iraq. Rashid saw me and stopped. His face crumpled, and he started crying. Not quietly, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. He covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed, unable to move forward. I crossed the terminal and wrapped my arms around him. My brother from another life, the man who'd saved me countless times, who'd disappeared to protect his family and suffered for years as a consequence. Who'd finally, against all odds, made it to safety. "You're home," I whispered. "You're safe now. Welcome home, brother." Rashid couldn't speak, just held on to me while his family gathered around us, crying too, relief and exhaustion and gratitude pouring out after years of fear and uncertainty. The other veterans came over, shaking Rashid's hand, thanking him for his service, welcoming him. We'd arranged temporary housing for his family. A veteran had offered a vacant house rent-free for 6 months. We'd collected furniture, clothes, kitchen supplies, everything they'd need to start over. We'd enrolled the kids in schools, found English classes for Rashid's wife and mother, connected Rashid with potential employers. "I don't know how to thank you," Rashid finally managed. "For 15 years I thought I'd never see you again. Thought I'd die in some camp, my children scattered as refugees. All of us paying forever for my decision to help American soldiers." And now he looked around at the terminal, at the veterans surrounding his family, at the banner welcoming him to America. Fresh tears ran down his face. "Now we're here, we're safe, my children will grow up without fear. They'll go to school, have opportunities, build lives. Because of you, because you didn't forget me." "You didn't forget me in Iraq," I said. "Remember that night in Sadr City, the ambush? You pulled me behind cover, kept me from bleeding out, called for medevac. You saved my life. I was doing my job, so was I, taking care of my brother, making sure he made it home." I gestured to his family. "This is home now, this is where you belong. where your children will be safe, and your family will thrive, and you'll never be alone again, Rashid. You've got a whole community of veterans who've got your back. Getting Rashid's family settled was a full-time job for the first month. Navigating immigration paperwork, setting up social security numbers and bank accounts, teaching them how to use American appliances, understand American money, navigate American bureaucracy. It was exhausting and complicated, and sometimes frustrating, but it was also joyful, watching Hassan experience his first day at an American high school, seeing Rashid's youngest daughter delight in having her own bedroom for the first time in years, observing Rashid's wife, Amira, make friends with neighbors who welcomed her despite the language barrier. Rashid found work within 2 months, a position as a translator for a refugee resettlement organization, helping other displaced families navigate the system he'd just survived. It was perfect for him. He knew the language, understood the culture, and had first-hand experience with the challenges refugees faced. I want to help others the way I was helped, he told me. So many interpreters are still waiting, still trapped, still in danger. If I can use my experience to advocate for even a few of them, to help speed up their cases, then maybe all of this suffering meant something. We stayed close. My daughter and Rashid's youngest became friends, playing together while the adults talked. My wife and Amira bonded despite the language barrier, finding ways to communicate through gestures and shared experiences of motherhood. Hassan joined my daughter's robotics club at school, his engineering aptitude immediately apparent. About 6 months after Rashid's arrival, we were having dinner at my house, both families together, the kind of ordinary evening that had seemed impossible just a year earlier. The kids were in the living room playing video games. The adults sat around the kitchen table, talking about nothing and everything. I need to tell you something, Rashid said during a lull in conversation. Something I should have explained 15 years ago but didn't because I was afraid. I felt a chill. Whatever he was about to say, it was important, something he'd been carrying for a long time. The day I disappeared in Baghdad, the day before you flew home. You remember I left a note saying I had to protect my family? I remember. I thought it meant you were leaving Baghdad, going into hiding because of threats. That was part of it, but not the whole truth. Rashid looked down at his hands. The truth is, I was warned that there was going to be an attack on your base, a major attack. Mortars, coordinated small arms fire, maybe a vehicle bomb, planned for the night before your flight home. My blood ran cold. What? I found out through family connections. My cousin knew someone who knew someone. Very indirect but credible. They were going to hit your base hard, trying to maximize American casualties, send a message that Iraq wasn't pacified even though most forces were leaving. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with anguish. I reported it immediately to your commanding officer, gave him everything I knew. He took it seriously, increased security, changed guard rotations, moved personnel away from likely impact zones. I don't remember any attack that night, because it didn't happen. The increased security spooked whoever was planning it, and they called it off. But after I reported it, your CO told me I needed to leave. Said that if the insurgents found out I'd warned Americans about their attack, my family would be tortured and killed. Said I'd become a high-value target and needed to disappear immediately for my own safety. The pieces suddenly fell into place. Why Rashid had left so suddenly, why he couldn't tell me where he was going, why his family had refused to give me information about his location. So that note you left about protecting your family was true, just not in the way you thought. I wasn't running from general threats. I was running because I'd prevented a specific attack, and the people who planned it would definitely come after me for it. Rashid's voice dropped. Your CO arranged everything, got me and my family out of Baghdad that night, set us up in Basra with new identities, told me to cut all contact with anyone from my old life, including you. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the attack was still classified. Because telling you would have required explaining intelligence sources that were protected. Because sometimes the military decides that keeping secrets is more important than letting soldiers understand what their interpreters sacrificed for them. Rashid leaned forward. Michael, I disappeared because I saved your life one last time. Because I chose to warn Americans about an attack even though I knew it would force me and my family into exile. And I couldn't tell you that for 15 years, because even admitting I knew about the attack could have put you in danger. I sat there processing this revelation. Rashid hadn't just disappeared to protect his family from general threats. He'd disappeared because he'd prevented an attack that could have killed dozens of Americans, including me, and he'd carried that secret for 15 years, unable to explain, unable to defend himself against the assumption that he'd simply abandoned the soldiers he'd worked with. All this time, I said slowly, I thought you just ran, thought you got scared and left, but you were protecting me, protecting all of us, and you couldn't even tell me why. I wanted to, so many times, wanted you to know that I didn't just abandon you, that I had a reason, but I was sworn to secrecy, and breaking that secrecy could have compromised other intelligence sources, could have put other people in danger. So I stayed silent, carried the guilt of leaving without explanation, accepted that you probably thought I was a coward. My wife reached across the table and took Rashid's hand. "You're the bravest person I know," she said. "You risked your life for years helping American soldiers. Then you sacrificed your home, your identity, your entire life to warn them about one more danger. And you never asked for recognition or gratitude. That's extraordinary courage." Rashid wiped his eyes. "I just did what I thought was right, what anyone would do." "No," I said firmly. "Most people wouldn't. Most people would have prioritized their own safety over warning soldiers about a classified attack. You chose our lives over your own safety, over your family's stability. That's not what anyone would do. That's what a hero does." The conversation shifted after that, moving to lighter topics, but the revelation hung in the air. Everything I'd thought I understood about Rashid's disappearance had been wrong. He hadn't abandoned us. He'd saved us one more time and paid an enormous price for it. Later that night, after Rashid's family had left and my own family was asleep, I sat in my living room thinking about sacrifice and secrets and the things we do for people we love. Rashid had given up everything, his home, his identity, 15 years of stability to save American lives. And he'd done it without recognition, without gratitude, without even the ability to explain why he'd done it. And now, finally, he was home. Not the home he'd been born in, but the home he'd earned through sacrifice and courage and unwavering loyalty. America, the country whose soldiers he'd protected at enormous personal cost. The country that had failed him for years, but ultimately, with the help of veterans who refused to forget, had finally kept its promise. I thought about the call that had come 11 months ago, the desperate voice asking for help, the 15 years of silence finally broken, and I thought about how close we'd come to failure, how easily Rashid could have remained trapped in that refugee camp, could have died waiting for a visa that would never come, could have become another tragic statistic of the interpreters we'd left behind. But he hadn't, because one phone call had sparked a chain reaction: advocacy, media attention, public pressure, congressional intervention, individual actions that had added up to something transformative. One interpreter and his family saved, brought home, given the safety and opportunity they'd earned. It wasn't redemption. The system was still broken. Thousands of other interpreters were still waiting, still in danger, still trapped by bureaucracy and inadequate funding and political indifference. Rashid's success story couldn't erase the system's massive failures, but it was something. One family safe, one debt repaid, one promise kept when institutions had failed to keep it. And maybe, I thought, that's how we fix broken systems. Not through dramatic overhauls or policy changes, though those are necessary too, but through individual actions. One veteran advocating for one interpreter, one family offering temporary housing, one community rallying around refugees who needed help. Small actions that add up, that save one life at a time, that honor the bonds formed in war zones and carry them forward into peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Rashid. "Thank you again, brother, for everything, for never giving up on me, for bringing my family home, for proving that some promises are never forgotten." I texted back, "You saved my life in Iraq more times than I can count. I just returned the favor. That's what brothers do." And it was true. That's what brothers do. We save each other, sometimes from bullets and mortars and ambushes in Baghdad, sometimes from refugee camps and broken bureaucracies and the despair of waiting forever for safety that seems like it will never come. Sometimes it takes 15 years. Sometimes it requires extraordinary effort. Sometimes the system fails so completely that individuals have to step in and force it to work. But in the end, we save each other, because that's what it means to be brothers. And some bonds, forged in the crucible of war, can survive 15 years of silence and thousands of miles of distance and still remain strong enough to save a life. Rashid was home. His family was safe. The promise implicit in every handshake between soldier and interpreter, that we'd take care of each other, that loyalty would be repaid, that no one would be left behind, had finally been kept. And somewhere in a refugee camp in Turkey, or Afghanistan, or Syria, other interpreters were still waiting, still hoping, still believing that maybe, somehow, America would remember its promises. We couldn't save them all. The system was too broken, the backlog too enormous, the need too vast, but we'd saved one, and tomorrow I'd start working on the next one, because that's what you do when you're given a second chance to keep a promise. You take it, and you don't stop until every last one of our brothers is home.